Another season is over after a suitably wacky finale to the Ligue campaign on Sunday night. The newly crowned title winners lost. The three teams who were fighting and hoping for Champions League qualification also lost. I think the big winners in the end were Lille and Auxerre, even though the latter defeated the former. The big losers were Nantes and Nice after terrible pitch invasions. We're going to look back at another memorable season in this episode 39 of the French Football Show. Thank you once again, everybody, for joining us. It has been a lot of fun this season hosting the French Football Show. My name is Matt Spiro, and once again, I'm joined by my two esteemed friends and colleagues, Andy Scott and Tom Williams. I'll start with you, Tom. Bonsoir. How are you doing?
Bonsoir. Yeah, all good, thanks, Matt. Had a sort of fairly classic weekend for me, watching all the Premier League football in Paris. And I've since been catching up on all the Ligue action, which again, sorry to say, I was unable to follow on the multiplex that yourself and our other esteemed colleague, Mr. Andy Scott, were voicing, because it wasn't available in the UK on the Ligue Plus app. So if you guys could take it up with your employers at the earliest available opportunity.
Well, I've asked
very grateful.
Yeah. I've asked one or two people what was going on there, because, you know, Andy and I, just to explain to listeners, so we commentate games regularly in English for the international audience. So all of the channels around the world that take Ligue 1 can use our commentary. And on these occasions, we did it for the last two rounds of the season. We commentate what they call the multiplex, the goal show. So I don't think anybody was across the 9 matches more than Andy and myself last night, because we're sitting in this commentary booth. We've got like small screens of all 9 games in this sort of grid, and then we've got the main feed of what the television viewers are seeing, and we jump from game to game, and we try to inform and occasionally entertain, but mainly inform. So I had a couple of very intense hours with Andy Scott on Sunday night, and it's the last person I want to see today. But Andy, it's nevertheless nice to see your Scottish face, slightly tired like me, but it was good fun. It was good fun, Andy. No.
Am I really the last person you want to see today?
No.
There must be somebody else who's behind me in that list. It was good fun. I mean, obviously, I think it's a real shame that Tom couldn't watch it. I don't know who else would be watching it in the UK, but some people might have watched it.
And I watched it last season. You guys absolutely killed it. I've been looking forward to it for weeks.
It is, but I think it's a very entertaining way to, like, a very interesting way to follow action for a couple of hours. It's obviously like frustrating if you want to be watching one team, like if you're a Lille fan and you just want to know what's going on between Lille and Auxerre. But if you're open-minded, interested in French football, I think there's loads to take in and enjoy.
Yeah, I agree. I think it's a real shame, but hey, there's always next year. So.
Well, look, I'm sure. Write in and let us know if you watched it in the United States or you know, wherever you may be living. We're keen to hear sort of how that all went down. I can confirm, just in case you missed it, Paris Saint-Germain are champions. That was secured on Wednesday night when they got a 2-0 win away to Lens. Yeah.
What?
Yeah, they won the league. Listen, it went down almost to the last weekend, and we talked last week about what a wonderful season Lens have had, and they deserve great credit. PSG, Lens and Lille have qualified for the Champions League. So Lille were actually beaten 2-0 at home by Auxerre, and yet they still finish in third place. Lyon come fourth despite losing 4-0 at home to a second-string Lens team. Remarkable performance from Lens there as well. So they are into the Champions League qualifying. They're going to have to go through 2 qualifying rounds. Marseille beat Rennes. So Abid Bey's quite traumatic season finished on a high as his Marseille side jumped above his former team Rennes. Marseille into the Europa League. Rennes finish 6th Europa Conference League. Monaco were definitely one of the big losers. They were 4-1 up in Strasbourg. Strasbourg roared back, won 5-4, and actually Monaco would have finished 7th anyway, but they finish with a defeat. They're out of Europe unless Lens win the cup final against Nice on Friday night. And if that happens, then Monaco sneak in to the Europa Conference League. At the bottom, Nantes and Metz are down. We already knew that. Nice have failed to beat Metz at home, already relegated Metz. It finished 0-0. There was a very angry pitch invasion at the end. So they have the playoff against AS Saint-Etienne. A two-legged playoff should be very interesting. And now, before we go into our sort of more informal awards, just in case you missed last week, we voted Vitinha as our player of the season, Warren Zaïre-Emery as our young player of the season, and Pierre Sage as our coach of the season. We're going to go a bit deeper now, and we're going to take a look at the season as a whole. We've got 5 or 6 or 7 categories. I'm not sure exactly how many. We're going to start with a good fun one that will provoke plenty of debate. I think the best signing of the season. And I'm going to start by asking Tom, who do you think your best signing is? Of course, this is, value for money as well as overall impact.
Yeah, I mean, there are lots of candidates for this award. There's lots of players who came in last summer who've succeeded in lighting up Ligue 1 in different ways. But I've gone for Florian Thauvin of Lens. I mean, a fairly obvious pick, I think, but someone whose return to France last summer created a lot of interest and a lot of intrigue, I think. We last saw him setting off a new life in Mexico after a relatively successful spell at Marseille. I mean, not so much on the trophy front, but certainly in terms of individual performances. He had a pretty dreadful time in Mexico, was trying to follow in the footsteps of André-Pierre Gignac, who has just become a god in Mexico. Was not the case for Thauvin. Worked as a literal, actual god. And yeah, Thauvin worked his way back to France via a stint at Udinese, which actually went pretty well. He ended up being the captain there. And he's been brilliant. 11 goals, 6 assists in Ligue 1. Played his way back into the France squad and scored on his France return, albeit hasn't made the cut for the World Cup. But he's just been fantastic. Every time you watch Lens and he's playing, he's generally one of the standout players, and signed off with the season in sensational fashion in that 4-0 win at Lyon that you've just been talking about, Matt. Scores the 4th goal, sent through on goal. Beautiful little feathery chip over the goalkeeper from the edge of the box. Inevitably got barracked by the Lyon fans for the whole game, but, played the entire match with a big smile on his face. And very fitting.
He gave it back, didn't he?
He did give it back a little bit as well. But again, fair enough. And I think it was very fitting that it should have been him to have scored the final goal of this exceptional Ligue 1 season for Lens. So now I guess we'll just wait to see whether they're going to go on and win the Coupe de France.
Yeah, that finish from Thauvin, he was racing through at full pelt and he's managed to lob it over Dominic Grieve. Just sensational. And yeah, I know that Marseille fans sort of enjoyed seeing him, an old Marseille favourite, rubbing it in to the Lyon fans at the end. So it's definitely a good shout. Andy, do you have a better shout than Florian Thauvin for best signing?
Well, I do actually. I think I do, but I actually have 3 and I can't pick one.
Well, that's not how it works.
Yeah, I know. But you can have a draw. You can have a draw at the top of the table. But the thing is that because I'm having this thought process of like which of those 3 has actually been the better signing, because I think they're all great signings. So anyway, I'm going to name one, and then I'll wait and see who you name, Matt. And then if it's not one of the other ones, then I will throw the other ones out there.
No, I've got 5. But I'll have to narrow that down. Go on, you give us yours.
This is getting out of hand already. What part of the very simple concept of best signing have you two not understood?
But I think they're all really good signings for different reasons. Okay, so can I just say them all? Right? Okay, I'm going to say them all.
No, you've got to pick one. That's how it works.
No. So I think the best signing has been Mamadou Sangare at Lens. I think that of all the signings that they've made, he has been the most outstanding of them all, because while he hasn't maybe contributed the goals and assists of Thauvin, even Hudson Edouard, I think Mathieu Udol, these kind of guys have all done great. Mamadou Sangare has been absolutely sensational. He has come from the Austrian league and he looks like a player who can play at an even higher level than Lens. I think he can do really well in the Champions League, and I wouldn't be surprised if after a season in the Champions League he ends up somewhere else and Lens sell him for a lot of money. The other two names I was going to mention, and the reason that I think Sangare does get my award is because Lens ultimately have finished second and may well win the French Cup, and they've overperformed as a result. The other two would be Esteban Lepau at Rennes. Obviously, he's the top scorer in the division, but then again, Rennes have finished sixth. And the other one is Afonso Moreira at Lyon, because he costs so little money. And actually, without him, they would have been in a pretty bad situation, because they needed him to come in when Malik Fofana got injured in late October. And he was brilliant. And I think that Lyon finishing as high as fourth in many respects is thanks to him. So Sangare gets it, but those two just behind.
Okay, well, look, the good news is out of the 5 that I'd noted, you've mentioned 4 of them, because I had noted Sangare, Udol, Moreira and Lepau. The other guy that I had noted is Arsène Kouassi, who has been brilliant for Lorient. And if you're talking about value for money, 1.5 million Arsène Kouassi cost from Ajaccio, I believe. 8 assists, and just, a left wing back at Lorient who's been such an important part of their good season. But you know what? I'm going to go... Great thigh. Oh, yeah, he does. Yeah, he's got...
I mean, you can't deny it. He's got great thighs.
You can't accept it, Matt.
It's definitely the best thighs, but I'm not sure if it's going to be best signing. So hang on. I'm just before I announce my shock choice, I want to back up what you're saying on Sangare, because I was in Lens on Wednesday night and I watched this guy in the flesh against Paris Saint-Germain, and my goodness me, like, he is a serious player. I don't think I quite realised, like, I'd admired him more from commentating off tube, like seeing him on the telly. Seeing him in the flesh like that, he has got size, presence, obviously ability on the ball as well. I really hope Lens can keep him. And this brings me, drumroll, to my best signing. I'm being a bit clever here. My best signing is Jean-Louis Leca, the Lens sporting director, because this guy has basically made all of the best signings, or almost all of them. Sangare, Udal, Samson Baidou, these Lens signings have been, Florian Thauvin obviously, have been phenomenal. So Jean-Louis Leca, Lens sporting director.
Yeah,
for me.
Goalkeeper.
He was okay, wasn't he? I mean, he wasn't great.
Average.
He was a bit small, yeah.
Should we do a separate category, best former goalkeeper turned sporting director, and we can each draw up a short list of 5 names?
Goalkeepers often do turn into sort of good sort of analytics guys or sporting directors. We're going to go. We're going to. Yeah, Eli Bo. Yeah,
it's a great time just naming sporting directors.
There are also we'll have to come back to this, because there are also ones where you look at and go, "What? He was a goalkeeper? Was Pierre Sage a goalkeeper? No, he was a defender, I think." Right.
No, I think he was a goalkeeper.
I think he was a goalkeeper.
Was he a goalkeeper? Okay.
Yeah.
Big boy. Must be difficult to beat. Biggest flop. So we're going, to the other end of the spectrum here. Tom, who have you got?
I mean, I feel cruel with this pick, because I think to an extent it's been out of his control. But you think back to last summer and the players who came into Ligue 1, and I think a player who we talked about perhaps more than anyone else was Paul Pogba, and this expectation that he would hopefully relaunch his career at Monaco, play his way back into the front squad, get himself onto the plane for the World Cup, and it just hasn't happened. I mean, he has barely played, and it's just because he's not been fit. And, you think back to that game the other week where he made his first start of the season. It was his first start since 2023, and it was the first time that he'd managed more than 45 minutes of competitive football since 2022. And I guess what we've seen this season is that when you've been out for that long, it is just very hard to come back at the highest level. It's going to be very interesting to see what happens now. Is he going to stay? Have Monaco seen enough? I mean, he's under contract for another season, so there's no reason why he should leave. But personally, I find it very hard to imagine him ever getting back to anything like the level that he has shown in the past, just because he's had an entire year to work on his fitness and hasn't really ever got there.
No, and it's been so long, hasn't it? Now you've got to fear for Pogba's sort of ability to ever play football at a at a high level again. So it is sad, no question about it, when you think about how excited we were at the start of the season about him, trying to come back and maybe getting into the World Cup squad. And the few minutes we've seen him, he's a delight to watch, but it's not just about... he does still have that elegance, that ability to ping passes, but your body needs to be able to follow that as well. Andy, what about yourself?
Yeah, well, obviously, as I said to you guys, I didn't share your optimism about Paul Pogba at the start of the season, and on our season preview pod, I said he would be the flop of the season. So I'm just going to claim 5 points for that. But my flop of the season is going to be another 2018 World Cup winner. So not Paul Pogba, not Florian Thauvin.
Surely not Tolisso.
Not Corentin Tolisso. Not Djibril Sidibe.
Hey, you
not
leave Samuel...
Giroud.
Yeah, I was going to say, you leave Djibril Sidibe alone.
Benjamin Pavard has been very poor this season for Marseille. So obviously it's not on the same level as Pogba, but Pavard, probably when Marseille signed him, I think there would have been a lot of hopes that he was going to be, the addition that would make them real competitors at Champions League level, because of course he played in the Champions League final last season for Inter Milan. I know it didn't work out very well, but the point is he was playing for a team on a regular basis last season who got to the Champions League final. And he comes to Marseille and he's been very, very poor. And as a consequence, of course, has completely disappeared off the France international scene. He's not going to be at this World Cup. And Marseille are not going to be keeping him. So I think while there are mitigating factors in relation to Paul Pogba, I don't really think that there are in relation to Pavard. I think there were big expectations about him, and he's been very poor.
Okay, I'm going to go for somebody who also isn't on the plane and who I think had high hopes for much of this season that he would be on that France aeroplane, Lucas Chevalier, which, again, I feel a bit harsh saying it because he's a bright young goalkeeper, but I thought he had what it takes to kind of step into Donnarumma's boots. I loved him at Lille, but it goes to show, with a goalkeeper, experience is really important. I think you grow, you get more mature, you gain sort of more presence, and actually moving to PSG, it's a massive change because you've just got one or two saves to make basically, and he wasn't making those saves, and yeah, he found it difficult. So I've not got much more to say about that other than it's a pity for him, and I hope he bounces back. It might be hard for him to bounce back at PSG, particularly the way Safanov's playing at the moment. But I'll go with Lucas Chevalier. I'm going to move the best and worst teams to the end of the debate. So we'll move on to another category, which is going to be best game. I've been racking my brains, and I've got a lot of terrific games that I've seen this season. Tom, once again, can you get the ball rolling?
Yes, I can. And with the caveat that I'm sure there have been other games since this one that I have enjoyed to a comparable level. But when I cast my mind back over the season and thought about the games that had stood out the most, I immediately found myself thinking about PSG's 6-3 win away to Toulouse at the end of August. PSG had started the season in very sleepy fashion. I think they won their first two games 1-0, did they? And it was all a little bit underwhelming. And suddenly there was this incredible game against Toulouse, illuminated by a hat-trick from João Neves that is one of the best hat-tricks you will ever see. Two absolutely perfect overhead kicks within 7 minutes of each other in the first half, and then an absolute rip snorter from the edge of the box with about 12 minutes remaining. Bacola scored another, Dembele scored a couple of penalties, and Toulouse scored 3 goals themselves, including 2 right at the end. So yeah, a slightly peculiar game, but the first time we saw some of the magic from PSG that we'd seen last season. And yeah, you don't see many 9-goal thrillers, including a hat-trick composed of 2 overhead kicks and a long-range thunderbolt.
No, you don't. We've got Roland Garros starting. We might see a few 6-3s there. But
there we go. Indeed.
I was lucky. Again, I was in the stadium for that, and yeah, when Neves did the second overhead kick, and you have a double take. Like, as he just repeated that exact same goal, it was absolutely phenomenal. A pretty remarkable night. I'm going to go for a PSG defeat. And there were quite a few of them this season. You know, they lost to Paris FC on Sunday. I think that's 6 league defeats now. Paris FC beat them twice, if you include the Coupe de France. Monaco beat them twice as well, did the double over them in the league. The two standouts for me, I was at the Velodrome when Marseille won 1-0. You know, in terms of atmosphere, I don't think I've seen anything comparable in France this season. Unbelievable. But I wouldn't say it was the best game of the season because it was a bit of a scrappy goal and Marseille were really digging in and getting the win. Rennes 3, PSG 1. This was a fantastic game. Amazing night at Roazhon Park. And I think it was special because it was so unexpected. Habib Beye had just been sacked. They had a caretaker coach, Sébastien Tombouré. And they had a team that was, I think, desperate to show what it was capable of, particularly the goalkeeper, Brice Samba, who had been dropped by Habib Beye. The previous game he came back was absolutely brilliant. PSG didn't necessarily play badly. They had a good number of chances. Samba was outstanding. El Tamari scored, Lepul scored, Mbolo scored, and it was a really sort of deserved 3-1 win. And I just came away from that thinking, wow, what a high-level, exciting game of football it was. So, yeah, that's my choice. Andy?
Yeah, hi.
What's been your best game this season?
Well, obviously, number one is Angers 0, Lyon 0 because of the flan that I had after the game. But if I had to choose another one, it would be PSG 3, Strasbourg 3, which is a game that I commentated. So obviously I was thinking about games I commentated. And this was in October. It was a fantastic game in which PSG went 1-0 up. Strasbourg came back to lead 3-1. Joaquin Panicelli, remember him, he scored twice. His header from a Guéladoué cross, I can't remember which goal that was on the night, but it was one of the best headers that I've ever seen live. And I've seen Henrik Larsson score plenty of brilliant headers in his time, but that was an incredible goal. PSG came back to draw 3-3, and it was really, you know, one of the best performances I've seen from an away team at the Parc des Princes, including the Champions League, over the last decade, I would say. Just the way in which they took the game to PSG, the bravery of that Strasbourg team, and really that was kind of them at their peak under Liam Rosignol. So that was a brilliant game, yeah.
Yeah, what a crazy season at Strasbourg. We could definitely do a whole podcast on the sort of highs and lows of Strasbourg's season. Perhaps encapsulated by Sunday's game when they went 4-1 down and you're thinking, oh, there's going to be a big fan protest here. And actually, the fans, it looked like they were behind them the whole game and they stormed back and won 5-4. All right, yeah, all good shouts. I would certainly commend going back and at least looking at the highlights of those games. And you should definitely check out the best goals this season. There were some amazing ones. 6 of them were chosen by the UNFP for the awards. And I don't want to make this all about me, but I looked at the 6 and 4 of them were games that I commentated. So I'm like, how lucky am I? Like I have seen some serious goals, including João Neves overhead kick, including the Ousmane Dembele chip against Lille, including Moussa Al-Samari, the volley, and one other. Anyway, I've named a few. Tom, what, have you got one that stands out above the rest?
Yeah, I love a chip, and I have long complained that chips feel like they're a dying breed in modern football. You just don't get as many as you used to. And I think about the iconic chips, like growing up, that Glenn Hoddle one against Watford back in the day, Cantona against Sunderland, etc. So I was pleased to see a couple of chips make the UNFP shortlist because there was one by following Balogun that got in there as well. But I'm going to go for the Dembele one against Lille. The most delicate chip I think I've ever seen on a football pitch. Gets the ball on the edge of the box, kind of cuts inside onto his left foot, draws a couple of defenders with him, and then kind of jinks again onto his left foot. And all the while, the Lille goalkeeper, Berke Ozer, is kind of being tempted off his line. Dembele realises this and lifts the daintiest little left foot chip over his head and into the net. And that coincided with a period when, after a difficult first half of the season, when he'd been injured quite a lot, Dembele started moving through the gears again. And you realised, in a way that I found really exciting, that no, last season wasn't going to be this fluke, this one-off. he has become a slightly different kind of player. He is still capable of being PSG's main attacking threat and creating these moments of magic. And I think that Lille goal in particular, I think was probably the standout moment from him this season in Ligue 1.
Yeah, it was a bit like sort of watching Andy when he's got his ball just on the fairway, about 30 yards to go to the green, and he just relaxes and just dinks it. Like the ball goes high. But like in all seriousness, it was a bit like, it did look a bit like a golf shot. And to hit that, to execute it like that, you need what the French call like incredible relâchement. And I don't know how to say that in English, but you just need your whole body just to be completely relaxed and just let your talent do the talking. And to do that in the middle of a busy penalty area, yeah, unbelievable. Yeah. So, I would definitely validate that choice as well, Tom. Andy, have you got anything better to offer us?
No, I think that is objectively the best goal, but I would say that after that, and for similar reasons, I would go with Balogun's goal against Marseille, which of course adds in a mistake by Benjamin Pavard, flop of the season at the beginning to set him on his way. And I think that the way that Balogun scored that goal was incredible, because if you watch him running towards goal, he's kind of actually running away from goal, sort of in the right-hand side of the penalty area, and it looks like the way in which he manages to send the ball kind of in the other direction over the goalkeeper and towards the far corner with a beautiful chip finish is the kind of thing that certainly me and the vast majority of professional footballers just wouldn't be able to get that right, because they would, I don't know, the body shape just didn't seem possible to sort of send the ball in that direction without, slicing it way past or whatever. But he just measured it perfectly. I thought it was a brilliant goal. And yeah, I would say really that one was only bettered by Dembele's.
Yeah, just to clear this up, like Andy's not that good at golf, but he hits the ball very high, and occasionally his chips are really good, a bit like that Dembele shot, but not every time. I probably
what's in front of you, Matt.
I probably go with Dembele, but actually, just to be a bit different, and also because I was in line with this shot and it was sensational, I'm going to go with Moussa Al-Tamari at the Groupama Stadium. Long sort of cross-field ball from Esteban Lepul, funny enough, who is the sort of fox in the box. He was spraying a sort of 40-yard cross-field ball to the left side, inside the penalty area. And Moussa Al-Tamari, when the ball goes in, you think he's smashed it because it just sort of flies past the goalkeeper. But looking at the replay, he doesn't. It's all about timing. He just kind of places it with the instep of his left foot, but it's very sort of high in the air, and he's jumping, and he places this absolute wonderful shot, top corner, magnifique. And that game was also, up there with the best of the season. Lyon coming back and winning 4-2. But yeah, Al-Tamari's goal was a joy to watch for me on that occasion. Right, we got two more categories to go. Let's go with this one. This could be the toughest of all because there is so much choice, I think. We've had a wild season. We're going to go for the best crisis, the biggest sort of meltdown. Now, there have been quite a few around the country. Yeah. I think there's one football club that maybe takes the biscuit in this category because it's probably had the most meltdowns. But if we're going for one, Tom, which team in particular moment would you single out?
Yeah, I mean, the team is an easy pick because it's Olympique de Marseille, who just lurch from crisis to crisis in an unremitting cycle and have done pretty much throughout their history. It's hard to single out a particular crisis, but I think I'll pick the one that kind of culminated in fire extinguisher gate last week. Not least because I've just written a big piece on it for The Athletic. Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang being slapped on the wrist and put on the naughty step after hosing sporting coordinator Bob Tarry with a fire extinguisher after they'd been, him and the players, locked in at the Marseille training ground for something like 4 days on end. And yeah, it just came at the end of this season that has seen them, knocked out of the Champions League by a 98th minute goal scored by the Benfica goalkeeper, go at the Coupe de France on penalties in a season when everyone thought they were going to win it, fail to qualify for the Champions League, succumbed to their biggest ever defeat against PSG and the heaviest defeat in that fixture's history. Change coach, change president, sport director's on his way out, and yeah, another basket case season for a very basket case club.
This is quite a French thing, though, isn't it? This like the fire extinguisher. It brings back memories. It was 2018, wasn't it, in Russia when
Adil Rami and all that. Yeah.
He took the fire extinguisher in the middle of the night to go and spray something. This was more like they were happy. I think they'd just gone through against Argentina, was it? And you've got these pictures of like the hotel being evacuated and Didier Deschamps down like outside the lobby in his pajamas, just looking absolutely furious.
So, important detail, he wasn't in his pajamas because it was reported at the time that he was, but he clarified that he'd hastily got dressed into a tracksuit or something. But yeah, basically the players it was the night...
Covered in dinosaurs or something.
Yeah. It was the night after the 4-3 win over Argentina in the last 16. Some of the players had gone out into town. And when they came back, Adil Rami was concerned that they might try some kind of prank. So he had preemptively put a fire extinguisher in his room. And when he heard them knock on his door, he opened it and, yeah, unleashed hell. But yeah, a slightly cheerier set of circumstances than at Marseille.
It's a shame that Adil Rami hasn't been picked for this World Cup, because even the previous ones, he was kind of seen as a mascot, just kind of brought along. So the fact that he's retired, it shouldn't change that much. But yeah, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang, I think you can imagine the players just going stir crazy, and Aubameyang just cracking, going, I've had enough of this, and just going and spraying Bob Surrey, who is a former steeplechase champion. No, he was a top level athlete, and there's Pierre-Emerick just like chasing him with a fire extinguisher. Amazing. Andy?
Yeah.
Meltdowns? What sticks in your mind?
Well, I think after Marseille, I think there are two other ones. You're probably both thinking of them. And I'm not going to say Nice because they could yet win the cup. So I'm going to say that everything might turn out rosy for them, but not this great club, being relegated, getting through 3 different coaches over the course of the season and just being an absolute disaster. With the background of the supporters very much disliking the owner, and then it all culminates last night in a lot of the fans, some of the fans getting onto the pitch during the game against Toulouse, and I don't really know what exactly they were trying to do other than just disrupt things, but we had the remarkable images of the coach Vahid Halilhodzic, who's a real firebrand despite being, well into his 70s now and having come out of retirement for this brief rescue mission which has failed, but confronting some of those fans and getting really wound up. I said this to you, Matt, last night, that I was getting a bit worried because there was a shot at one point of him sitting somewhere off the pitch and he was sort of holding his chest, and I thought, this looks really bad. This looks like he has gone a bit over the top in trying to calm things down and that he might be about to have a terrible health scare. Seems that he's okay, but I think that for it to all culminate in that and for the game to be abandoned and not to be, going down, probably going to be getting quite seriously punished off the back of that, I think that's quite a meltdown. So I would say...
Certainly is.
I would say not, albeit there is some competition.
Yeah, and I think if the non-players had shown the same sort of fight and the same courage as Coach Vahid over the last few weeks, then they wouldn't be going down. And it is sad to see. And I for one hope that Nantes can sort of rebuild and try to come back stronger. I do think though that Nice deserve a proper mention because their meltdown just before Christmas was pretty spectacular. Yeah. The ultras. Grouping at the training ground as Nice came back from a game. They were brought back on the bus and the fans confronted the players. There are all sorts of sort of contrasting reports, really, because a lot of the fans say there was no violence, only spitting and insults being thrown at the players, which is not particularly nice. But Jeremy Boga and Terem Moffi claiming that they were physically attacked as well, along with Florian Maurice, the sporting director. Boga and Moffi never played for the club again. Francaise left the club. I mean, You talk about those scenes at the Beaujoire on Sunday night. It was a very sort of sorry Allianz Riviera on Sunday night as well. Nice 0, Metz 0, a pitch invasion, a lot of booing throughout the game. I mean, that club who finished 4th last season, they're in big, big trouble. So, I think Nice and Nantes giving Marseille a run for their money. But yeah, Marseille season, pretty spectacular. We're going to finish up with a big award, the Best Team Award, which, in theory goes to the league champions, but we're taking into account everything here. We're taking into account budget. We're taking into account supporters, community, the whole shebang. Best team, Tom Williams. Your best Ligue 1 team, 25-26.
I mean, there's a few contenders. I mean, PSG, obviously, they are, once again, the best team in the division, given that they've won it. Lorient have had an incredible season in a way that I think a lot of people wouldn't have expected. Lyon's season ended in disappointing fashion with back-to-back defeats, but nevertheless, given the fact that they looked like they were about to drop into Ligue 2 last summer, pretty incredible achievement. But it has to be Lens. I think when we look back at this season, most people will remember it more for what Lens did than what PSG did, albeit, Lens missed out on the title race in the end. They've got the best support. The stadium is always full. The atmosphere is incredible. As we've said already, their recruitment was fantastic. They've got the best coach in Pierre Sage, or certainly, over the course of the Ligue 1 campaign, who managed to, unite this group of players. And it was quite a kind of a ragtag of players, picked up from various different places. Look at people like Odson Edouard, whose career just looked to be drifting to, into nothing in England, brought back to France, completely revitalised. Wesley Saïd alongside him has the season of his life. Thauvin, as we've said, has been brilliant. Mathieu Udol, exceptional. Adrien Thomasson, Mamadou Songare. You can go through the entire team, and to a man, they've been fantastic. They play very kind of simple but really effective, very direct football, lots of crosses. Give practically everyone they come up against a game. And obviously, we have a duty to remain neutral on this podcast, but I think it would be a very fitting culmination to their season if they were to go on and win the Coupe de France on Friday, which, of course, is a competition that they've never won.
Yeah, it's hard to see them not winning it, but you never know in a final, 90 minutes, anything can happen. But yeah, for me, they've been the story of the season. They've brought a lot of, I think, the excitement and the joy into the season. The fact they've pushed PSG so hard. And we were saying, Andy and I, during the commentary, Pierre Sage made all those changes on Sunday night away to Lyon. And you're thinking, there's still a lot to play for Lyon. Is he right to make those changes? And you just see how well drilled they are. It almost didn't matter who was on the pitch. They played like a Pierre Sage team and they won 4-0. Andy, have you got a team to single out?
Well, I mean, listen, I just have to agree that it's Lens. It's really hard to, say anything else. And I mean, they have been, because I think they've punched so far above their weight in terms of budget. So it's a triumph of good management and just a club being well run. And it's hard not to like that. And, Tom mentioned Lorient. You could maybe even say Le Havre, because they're a club with no money, like, very little means, and yet they keep on surviving and doing it. The fight they show is tremendous. We saw what it meant to the team and the players and the coach last night, Didier Digard, when they stayed up again on the final day. That was great. But listen, none of it can match what Lens have done. I know Tom says we need to be neutral.
We don't.
No, but maybe
as a journalist, you probably should.
Yeah, but it is a shame that in the same, I'm Scottish in the same way that, and I'm not a Hearts fan at all, absolutely not. But it is objectively a shame that Hearts didn't win the league at the weekend. Yeah. And, because it might be a while before they get the chance again. And I know that Lens were runners-up 3 years ago and were actually closer 3 years ago to PSG in the final reckoning. But, how easy is it going to be for Lens to keep doing this? And I just think that you saw PSG, it's funny because when PSG won the league on Wednesday night, you were at the game in Lens, Matt, when they won the league. And I was speaking to a colleague of mine who was with me when they won the league. And we were remarking on this, there's no disturbances in the streets. There's no people out celebrating PSG winning the Ligue 1 title. Whereas when they got to the Champions League final a couple of weeks ago, there were people being arrested for going a bit too far in the celebrations. And the fact is that PSG winning the league just doesn't mean all that much. And I think that's a problem.
Yeah.
And it's repeated in lots of different countries. But to me, it's just a shame that Lens didn't win the league for that reason. But they might still win the cup, and that would be fantastic.
Yeah, and we don't know what's around the corner, but I agree with you, and I think the kind of success of Ligue 1 and the excitement of a Ligue 1 season just depends on the other teams being able to raise their game. What Lens have done is fantastic. Now France needs, we've been saying it for many years, France needs Marseille, Monaco, Lyon. They need these big teams to be putting projects together like the Lens project.
Can I just make a very quick comment on this very quickly, because I know that Tom has to go and do something very important tonight, but you guys will agree with me on this, that it was pointed out to me today that in the last couple of years, the team that finishes in second place tends to be a team without any major European commitments, and then the next season they can't repeat that. So, we've seen it with Lens a few years ago. We saw, I think, with Marseille last season when they finished in second place without any European football. I can't remember the season before, but Lens obviously this season. So this keeps. So it's going to be very hard for Lens next season, right? But
it's another debate, isn't it, for another day? But yeah, Bruno Genesio throwing the Europa League against Aston Villa, and he'll be feeling vindicated because they came third. Listen, I'm going for Lorient just to be different. Promoted last season, unbelievable. They finished top half. They finished in ninth, and one of my former Gunners, Laurent Koscielny, is pulling the strings as a sporting director. So, fair play to Lorient, but it's been a fantastic season. Do keep your eyes peeled. There'll be plenty more content coming through. Hopefully, some regular World Cup content as well as build up to the Champions League final, and a bit of chat about the Coupe de France as well between Lens and Nice. I'm going to be at the Stade de France with Andy Scott for that one, so that should be fun. Thank you ever so much for joining us. Please do rate us, subscribe, comment, everything else on the podcast platforms and on YouTube. From Tom, Andy, and myself, it is au revoir. I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.